Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Jernigan, in Oklahoma, the State Department of Health has reported that influenza has already claimed 1 life and hospitalized 70 others. Continuing on the comments that you and Dr. Fauci have made, when I look my constituents in the eye back home to stress the importance of getting vaccinated and to prevent the hospitalizations, death, could you expand on that? You're in a town meeting with me, you're looking my neighbors in the eye, this is rural Oklahoma, you're talking about things that are to the point.
Well, certainly we know the burden of influenza is very high. That is, the illnesses and deaths that occur because of influenza. There are tens of millions of cases every year, hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations, and tens of thousands of deaths that occur every year. We know that with the vaccine that we have, you can prevent thousands of deaths every year and tens of thousands of hospitalizations. It's important to get vaccinated, not just for yourself, but because it also helps protect the community around you. There are a number of benefits that the vaccine has. It prevents you from getting sick. It reduces you from having to be hospitalized with flu. For people with underlying chronic diseases, it's actually like a prevention tool. It's like something you should take every year because it can keep you from getting a second heart attack. So people with underlying conditions, it helps them as well. It protects pregnant women and their babies so that those that are born but not 6 months and eligible for vaccine, getting the pregnant mother vaccinated actually helps the baby during that period of time before they can get vaccinated. There's data that shows that it's life-saving in children. You can actually reduce the chance of death with influenza by 65%. So there are a number of things that are important about it. Even if it's not 100% effective, like Dr. Fauci mentioned, it can reduce the severity of illness that you have during the flu season if you were to get infected.
Dr. Fauci, my background is in agriculture, and in that world, of course, we have the robust National Veterinary Stockpile, which is prepared to provide farmers and ranchers with countermeasures against damaging animal diseases such as avian influenza and swine flu within 24 hours. Could you speak to the current state of the human vaccine stockpile management and what we could do to better prepare to address potential pandemic emergencies?
Sure. I would love to do that, except that the CDC is the one who's responsible for the stockpile, so I'll pass that to Dr. Jernigan.
I'll flip over to you then, Doc.
Not to keep passing this, but actually BARDA is the one that manages the vaccine.
With the great insight that both of you have,
Yeah,
enlighten us in what's going on so we can reassure the folks back home
Sure.
we're paying attention. That is, you and your entities are taking care of their best interest.
Absolutely. So I think in terms of what we do at CDC, we monitor influenza around the globe, especially the avian influenza and the swine influenza viruses that are emerging around the globe. We do that through 143 laboratories where we detect those. We take that information and use it in a thing called the Influenza Risk Assessment Tool, or the IRAT. You can actually go on your browser and put in IRAT CDC and see a graph of where we have ranked these different concerning potential pandemic viruses in that graph. With that information, we work with the rest of the interagency to determine which of those should be made into vaccine candidates, which of them should actually be made into vaccines and stockpiled, which ones should undergo trials. And so with that, we have made decisions about things to put into that stockpile so that the U.S. is prepared. Many of those vaccines, say for instance the H5N1 vaccine, it's in the vaccine stockpile. It may be enough to vaccinate first responders and a few small risk groups. However, these viruses continue to change. And so it's actually very important for us to find new vaccine technologies so that the vaccine stockpile isn't something that just has to keep getting more and more vaccines put into it, but rather upstream we have fast technologies that will be able to make vaccines quickly. And then ultimately, once there is a universal vaccine, that may be the best thing for us to prevent pandemics, is to have that available.
In my final moments before I yield back, I alluded in my opening statement to my father's observations in the 40s and 50s prior to the development of the polio vaccine in 55, how the outbreaks kept seemingly getting worse and worse, and the sheer terror that it brought in the communities in that late summer season and early fall. My generation was not alive for that, did not experience that, but it was truly terrifying. My first off-farm job when I was 14 was mowing a little country cemetery. and I had an aunt, great aunt, who was the family historian. And I remember asking her why, in one section of the cemetery, why are all these babies buried? Why are all these young women buried? She said, look at the tombstones. They say 1918 and 1919. The Spanish flu took them all, and brought, even in rural Oklahoma, society to a grinding halt for weeks and weeks as this passed through. My generation, having not experienced any of that, sometimes doesn't necessarily understand what the potential downside is and why you gentlemen and all of your colleagues work so hard. And thank you, Dr. Barra, for giving us this opportunity to focus on these issues. And with that, I yield back.